Baby found a mother. Bear mouth taped shut. What baby did next was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The golden rays of early morning sunlight filtered through the pine trees, casting long shadows across the wooden porch of the Marshall family cabin. Nestled at the edge of Whispering Pines Forest, the small rustic retreat stood in peaceful isolation, miles away from the nearest neighbors. It was the perfect getaway for Lily and Ethan Marshall, who had brought their 14-month-old son Noah to experience nature for the first time. Noah, with his wispy blonde curls and bright blue eyes that seemed to absorb everything around him, had just learned to toddle on unsteady legs. His curiosity knew no bounds, making his parents vigilant whenever they were outdoors. But this morning seemed especially peaceful. Birds chirping melodiously, a gentle breeze rustling through the leaves, and the occasional scurrying of small woodland creatures through the underbrush. Lily sat on the porch swing, nursing a steaming cup of coffee, watching as Noah played with a set of wooden blocks on a blanket spread across the weathered boards. Ethan had gone to collect firewood from the small shed behind the cabin, promising to return shortly. The family had arrived at the cabin just yesterday, seeking a week's respite from their hectic city life. "Look at the butterfly, Noah," Lily cooed as a monarch fluttered past, its orange wings gleaming in the sunlight. Noah's eyes widened with delight, his tiny fingers reaching out as if he could capture the delicate creature in his hands. The butterfly danced in the air before gradually drifting toward the edge of the forest. Noah, entranced by its vibrant colors, pushed himself up onto his feet and took several wobbly steps toward it, giggling with each unsteady movement. "Noah, stay close," Lily called, placing her coffee mug on the small table beside her. But her attention was momentarily diverted when her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan, asking where they kept the axe. As she typed a quick response, Noah continued his determined pursuit of the butterfly, his chubby legs carrying him farther from the porch than he had ever ventured before. When Lily looked up, her heart skipped a beat. Noah was no longer on the porch, but toddling determinedly toward the tree line, following the butterfly's erratic path. "Noah," she called, jumping to her feet. But before she could reach him, a strange sound emanated from the forest. Not quite a growl, not quite a whimper, something pained and desperate that made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end. Noah paused, his head tilting curiously toward the sound. The butterfly forgotten, he changed direction, drawn to the mysterious noise like a moth to flame. He disappeared behind a dense thicket of bushes just as Lily reached the edge of the porch. "Noah, come back." Panic laced her voice as she rushed down the steps, her bare feet hardly registering the cool morning dew on the grass. The strange sound came again, louder this time, a muffled, frantic noise that seemed to be a cry for help. Behind the bushes, in a small clearing not 20 feet from the cabin's porch, Noah stood frozen, his eyes wide with wonder and concern. There, lying on her side in the dappled morning light, was an enormous brown bear. Her massive body heaved with labored breaths, her eyes wild with fear and pain. Around her snout, layers of thick silver duct tape had been wrapped cruelly tight, preventing her from opening her mouth. Beside her, a small bear cub, no bigger than a medium-sized dog, nudged desperately at its mother, whimpering in confusion and distress. Noah's innocent mind couldn't comprehend the danger before him. All he saw was pain, a creature in need, and it awoke something profound in his pure, untainted heart. As Lily's frantic footsteps approached, Noah did something that would soon become a story told and retold throughout the region, something so shocking and innocent that it defied all natural laws of survival and fear. He took a step toward the suffering mother bear. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The birds fell silent. Even the gentle breeze stilled, as if nature itself was watching in disbelief. A twig snapped under Noah's tiny foot, and the mother bear's head jerked toward the sound. Her eyes, deep pools of amber flecked with terror and exhaustion, locked onto the small human child. The cub huddled closer to its mother, trembling with fear and confusion. Its soft whimpers cut through the heavy silence of the forest. Noah, barely old enough to form words, made a soft cooing sound that carried a universal language of comfort and concern. "Noah." Lily's voice shattered the moment as she burst through the thicket, her face draining of color when she saw the scene before her. Her maternal instincts screamed for her to snatch her child away from the massive predator, but fear paralyzed her limbs. The bear could easily kill them both with a single swipe of her powerful paw, tape or no tape. "Don't move," came a harsh whisper from behind her. Ethan had returned from the shed, the forgotten axe still clutched in his white-knuckled grip. He slowly moved to stand beside his wife, his eyes never leaving the enormous bear and their son, who stood just feet apart. The mother bear struggled to rise, her movements sluggish and disoriented. The tape around her snout was crusted with blood where it had cut into her flesh, evidence of her desperate attempts to free herself. She swayed on her feet, her massive body weakened by what must have been hours, perhaps even days, of being unable to eat or drink. "Dear God," Ethan breathed, his voice barely audible. Someone trapped her and left her to die. The cruelty of it struck Lily like a physical blow. Who would do such a thing to an animal, and why? The question swirled in her mind as she watched her baby boy, her precious, innocent Noah, standing before a creature that could end his life in seconds. "We need to back away slowly," Ethan said, reaching for Lily's hand. "I'll try to distract her while you grab Noah." But Noah had other plans. With the fearlessness that only comes from complete innocence, the toddler took another wobbly step forward, then another. The mother bear watched him approach, her chest heaving with labored breaths through her nostrils. The cub peeked out from behind its mother's leg, curiosity momentarily overriding fear. "Noah, no!" Lily's whisper was strangled by terror. She made a move to lunge forward, but Ethan held her back. "Wait," he said, his voice tight with tension. "She's not charging. She's not even growling." It was true. The mother bear remained still, watching the approaching human child with what appeared to be wary resignation. Perhaps she was too weak to attack, or perhaps something in the toddler's unthreatening presence communicated a kind of safety she instinctively understood. Noah reached the bear and, to his parents' horror, placed his tiny palm against the coarse fur of her front leg. The bear flinched but didn't move away. The cub edged closer, sniffing curiously at Noah's outstretched hand. Then came a sound that would haunt the Marshalls for years to come, the sharp crack of a twig breaking somewhere deeper in the forest, followed by hushed male voices. The mother bear's ears perked up, and fear flashed in her eyes. The cub pressed closer to its mother, trembling against her leg. "Someone's coming," Ethan whispered, tightening his grip on the axe. A new understanding dawned on Lily. "The poachers," she breathed. "They must be coming back to check their trap." Noah, oblivious to the new danger, had reached up toward the bear's face. His small fingers brushed against the edge of the duct tape that sealed the animal's mouth shut. The bear lowered her head slightly, as if in surrender or perhaps, impossibly, in request. "What is he doing?" Ethan's voice was tense with disbelief. Before their eyes, their baby boy began to tug at the edge of the tape. his clumsy fingers working to peel it away from the bear's snout. The bear remained perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the child with an intelligence that seemed to transcend the natural boundaries between species. The voices in the forest grew louder, and then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps crushing leaves and branches. Whoever had done this horrible thing to the mother bear was returning, and they were close. "We need to get Noah now," Ethan said urgently, taking a cautious step forward. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs as she watched her son continue his determined efforts to free the bear, completely unaware of the approaching danger. The cub had moved closer to Noah, its small wet nose nudging against the boy's arm as if encouraging him. In that moment, a figure emerged from the trees on the far side of the clearing, a tall, gaunt man dressed in camouflage, carrying a rifle. He froze when he saw the scene before him, a toddler peeling tape from the mouth of a bear he had cruelly trapped, while two terrified adults stood watching. "What the hell?" the man exclaimed, raising his rifle instinctively. "No!" Lily screamed, breaking free from Ethan's grip and rushing toward Noah. The sudden movement and cry startled everyone, the poacher, the bear, even little Noah, who lost his balance and tumbled backward onto his bottom, but not before he had managed to loosen a significant portion of the tape from one side of the bear's muzzle. The bear shook her head violently, using her paw to tear at the partially loosened tape. The poacher took aim, his finger moving to the trigger. "Don't shoot!" Ethan shouted, charging forward with the axe raised. But before either man could act, a second figure burst into the clearing from yet another direction. This newcomer was different. A woman in a forest ranger's uniform, her own weapon drawn and pointed directly at the poacher. "Drop it, Harlan," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "Game warden, drop your weapon now." The poacher, Harlan, hesitated, his rifle still aimed at the struggling bear. Noah began to cry, frightened by the sudden shouting. The bear cub pressed against him as if seeking comfort, creating an image so surreal it seemed almost staged. "I said drop it," the ranger repeated, advancing steadily. With a curse, Harlan lowered his rifle, just as the mother bear finally succeeded in tearing the remaining tape from her snout. She opened her mouth wide, revealing long yellowed teeth, and let out a roar of relief and rage that shook the trees around them. In the chaos that followed, several things happened at once. Lily reached Noah and scooped him into her arms, the bear cub scampering back to its mother. Ethan positioned himself protectively in front of his family. The ranger handcuffed the poacher, who was now pale with fear, and the freed mother bear stood to her full height, towering over them all, her mouth now capable of delivering the deadly bite she had been prevented from using. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the bear's next move. Would she attack now that she was free? Would her maternal instinct to protect her cub override any gratitude she might feel toward the tiny human who had helped her? The bear took a menacing step forward, and Ethan raised his axe defensively. The ranger's hand moved to her sidearm, but then the most extraordinary thing happened. The mother bear lowered her head toward Noah, who was still crying softly in his mother's arms. She sniffed at him gently, her hot breath washing over the child's tear-stained face. Noah's cries subsided, and he looked up at the massive creature with wide, wondering eyes. The bear made a soft grunting sound, almost like a thank you, before turning away. With her cub following close behind, she lumbered toward the deeper part of the forest, disappearing into the shadows between the trees. A stunned silence fell over the clearing. "I've been tracking that poacher for weeks," the ranger said finally, securing Harlan's cuffs. "Never expected to find this." She gestured vaguely at the marshals and the spot where the bear had stood. "Your son is either the bravest or the luckiest kid I've ever seen." Ethan lowered the axe, his legs suddenly weak with relief. "I don't even know what just happened." Lily clutched Noah tighter, her tears mingling with his as she buried her face in his soft hair. "He saved her," she whispered. Somehow, he knew she needed help. But their ordeal wasn't over yet. As the ranger began to lead Harlan away, the poacher turned back with a venomous glare. "This ain't finished," he spat. "You think I'm the only one hunting in these woods? My partner's still out there, and he won't take kindly to what happened here today." The ranger jerked him forward roughly. "Save it for the judge, Harlan. You're looking at serious charges for animal cruelty and illegal hunting." As they disappeared into the trees, Ethan turned to Lily, his face grave. "We need to pack up and leave, now. If there's another poacher out there—" Lily nodded, her arms still wrapped protectively around Noah, who had fallen strangely quiet. When she looked down at her son, she was startled to find him staring intently at the spot where the mother bear and her cub had vanished. A look of determination on his small face that seemed far too mature for his age. "Bear?" Noah said clearly, one of the few words in his limited vocabulary. "Bear hurt." A chill ran down Lily's spine. Something told her that this encounter had changed their lives in ways she couldn't yet understand. As they hurried back to the cabin, she couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching them, that something ancient and powerful had witnessed what had transpired in that clearing. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, a freed mother bear led her cub toward safety, the strange scent of the human child who had helped her still lingering in her nostrils. Back at the cabin, chaos reigned as the marshals frantically packed their belongings. Ethan moved with military precision, shoving clothes into suitcases and gathering their essential items. Lily focused on Noah, changing him into a fresh outfit and packing his diaper bag with trembling hands. The toddler remained unusually subdued, his eyes frequently drifting toward the window that faced the forest. "We'll be on the road in 20 minutes, Ethan said, zipping up a duffel bag. "I've already called the local sheriff to report what happened, but I don't want to stick around and risk another encounter with these poachers." Lily nodded absently, her mind still replaying the surreal scene they had witnessed. "Do you think the ranger will be all right alone out there with another poacher still at large?" "She seemed capable," Ethan replied, though worry creased his brow. "She said backup was already en route when she found us." A sharp knock at the door made them both freeze. Ethan motioned for Lily to take Noah to the bedroom while he grabbed the axe he had brought inside. He approached the door cautiously, his knuckles white around the wooden handle. "Who is it?" he called, positioning himself to the side of the door in case someone tried to force their way in. "Forest Service," came a deep, unfamiliar male voice. "Need to speak with you about the bear incident." Ethan hesitated, suspicion gnawing at him. "Show me your badge through the window." There was a pause, then the sound of footsteps moving toward the window beside the door. A face appeared, a middle-aged man with a weathered complexion and cold eyes that didn't match his forced smile. He held up what appeared to be an official Forest Service badge, but something about it seemed off to Ethan. "I'm going to call the ranger station to verify," Ethan said, not moving to open the door. "What's your name and badge number?" The smile disappeared from the man's face. "Look, I don't have time for this. Your kid interfered with a hunting operation and—" "Hunting operation?" Ethan cut him off, anger building in his chest. "You call taping a bear's mouth shut and leaving it to suffer a hunting operation? That's torture, plain and simple." The man's expression darkened. "Open the door, or I'll open it for you." "I'm calling the police," Ethan warned, backing away from the door toward the landline mounted on the kitchen wall. The man disappeared from the window. A moment later, the sound of splintering wood filled the cabin as a boot connected with the door frame. The lock held, but barely. Ethan shouted for Lily to take Noah and lock themselves in the bathroom, then positioned himself in front of the weakening door, axe raised defensively. The man kicked again, and this time the door burst open, sending wood chips flying across the room. The intruder stood in the doorway, no longer pretending to be a forest ranger. In his hand was a hunting knife, its blade catching the light from the cabin windows. "Where's the kid?" he demanded, his voice low and threatening. "That bear was worth a fortune to the right buyers. Your little brat cost us everything." "Get out of my house," Ethan warned, standing his ground despite the fear coursing through him. "The police are on their way." The man laughed, a cold sound devoid of humor. "Police take at least 40 minutes to reach this remote area. By then, I'll be long gone." He advanced into the cabin, knife extended. Ethan swung the axe in a warning arc, forcing the man to step back momentarily. "I don't want to hurt you, man," the poacher said, circling to the left. "Just give me something to make up for our losses. Cash, valuables, whatever you got." Ethan realized the man was trying to work his way toward the bedroom. "There's money in my wallet on the counter," he said, pointing with his free hand while keeping the axe raised with the other. "Take it and go." The poacher's eyes flicked to the counter, then back to Ethan. "Not enough," he growled. "Those bears were going to set us up for months. The mother's gallbladder alone would fetch thousands on the black market. Now she's gone, and Harlan's been arrested." Ethan's stomach turned at the casual way the man spoke about butchering the animals for profit. "You're sick," he said, disgust evident in his voice. A cry from Noah in the bathroom broke the tense standoff. The poacher's head snapped in that direction, a calculating look entering his eyes. "Don't even think about it," Ethan warned, adjusting his grip on the axe. The standoff might have continued indefinitely if not for the sound that suddenly echoed through the cabin. A deep, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate the very floorboards beneath their feet. Both men froze, their eyes drawn to the still open front door. There, filling the entrance with her massive frame, stood the mother bear. Somehow, impossibly, she had tracked them to the cabin. Her eyes, no longer clouded with pain and fear, burned with a determined intelligence as she surveyed the scene before her. Behind her, partially hidden by her bulk, her cub peered into the human dwelling with nervous curiosity. The poacher's face drained of color. "Impossible," he whispered, his knife hand trembling visibly now. How did she find this place? Ethan, equally shocked, backed slowly toward the bathroom where his family had taken refuge. "Just go," he told the poacher, his voice barely above a whisper. "Go out the back door and don't come back." But the poacher, either from fear or desperation, made a fatal mistake. He lunged toward Ethan, knife extended, perhaps thinking to use him as a shield against the bear. The sudden movement triggered the bear's protective instincts. With a roar that shook the windows, she charged into the cabin, moving with surprising speed for an animal of her size. Ethan dove to the side, narrowly avoiding both the knife and the bear's massive bulk as she barreled past him toward the poacher. The man screamed, dropping his knife and turning to flee, but he was too slow. The bear caught him with a powerful swipe of her paw, sending him crashing into the kitchen cabinets with bone-crushing force. Ethan scrambled toward the bathroom, throwing himself against the door. "Lily, it's me. Let me in." The lock clicked, and he tumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind him. Lily stood in the bathtub, holding Noah protectively against her chest, her eyes wide with terror. "What's happening?" she whispered, flinching as another roar reverberated through the cabin, followed by the sound of breaking furniture and a man's agonized screams. "The bear?" Ethan panted, bracing himself against the door, though he doubted its flimsy lock would hold against the bear's strength if she decided to come after them next. "She followed us home. She's attacking the poacher." Noah, who had been whimpering softly against his mother's shoulder, suddenly perked up at the mention of the bear. "Bear," he said again, this time with a note of recognition in his voice. He began squirming in Lily's arms, trying to get down. "No, honey," Lily soothed, tightening her grip. "We need to stay here where it's safe." The sounds of destruction from the main room gradually subsided, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow more terrifying. The three of them huddled in the bathroom, straining to hear any indication of what might be happening beyond the door. Then came a soft scratching sound, followed by a low, inquisitive grunt. Something was sniffing at the gap beneath the bathroom door. Noah suddenly let out a delighted giggle and pointed at the door. "Bear!" he exclaimed, with far more enthusiasm than the situation warranted. Lily and Ethan exchanged terrified glances. Had the bear disposed of the poacher and now come for them? Ethan gripped the axe tighter, knowing it would be little defense against such a powerful animal in the confined space of the bathroom. The scratching continued for several agonizing minutes. Then, unexpectedly, came the sound of the front door creaking, followed by receding heavy footsteps. The bear, it seemed, was leaving. Still they waited, hearts pounding, for what felt like an eternity before Ethan finally gathered the courage to crack open the bathroom door and peer out. The cabin was a disaster. Furniture overturned, claw marks gouged into the wooden floors, and alarmingly, a trail of blood leading from the kitchen to the front door. But of the poacher and the bear, there was no sign. "Is it safe?" Lily whispered, still clutching Noah despite his continued attempts to wriggle free. "I think they're gone," Ethan replied, opening the door wider and stepping cautiously into the hallway. "But we need to leave right now." They moved quickly through the wreckage of their vacation home, averting their eyes from the bloody smears on the kitchen floor. Ethan grabbed their half-packed bags, and they hurried out to their car, constantly scanning the tree line for any sign of the bear's return. As Ethan fumbled with the keys, Lily secured Noah in his car seat, then froze. "Ethan," she said, her voice tight with renewed fear, "look." He followed her gaze to the edge of the forest, where the underbrush rustled ominously. Slowly, deliberately, the mother bear emerged once more, her fur matted with what Ethan strongly suspected was the poacher's blood. The cub bounded at her heels, seemingly unaffected by whatever violence its mother had just committed. "Get in the car," Ethan said quietly, not taking his eyes off the bear. Slowly. They slipped into the front seats and Ethan inserted the key into the ignition with trembling fingers. The bear watched them, making no move to approach. There was something in her posture, a sort of satisfied vigilance, that gave Ethan the uncanny impression she was seeing them off, ensuring they departed safely. As the engine roared to life, Noah pressed his small hands against the window, gazing back at the bear and her cub with unmistakable recognition. "Bye-bye, bear," he said clearly, waving his tiny hand. And then, in a moment that would haunt Ethan and Lily's dreams for years to come, the mother bear raised her massive paw and held it aloft for a moment, as if returning the child's farewell, before turning and disappearing back into the forest with her cub. Did she just... Lily couldn't finish the sentence, her worldview shifting uncomfortably on its axis. Ethan said nothing, putting the car in reverse and backing away from the cabin as quickly as safety allowed. His mind was having trouble processing everything they had witnessed in the past few hours. A bear that should have been a mindless predator showing mercy to their child, then tracking them to their cabin, disposing of a threat, and now seemingly bidding them farewell. As they reached the main road, Lily finally broke the silence. "What happened back there, Ethan?" That wasn't normal bear behavior. Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "I don't know," he admitted. "None of this makes any sense." In the back seat, Noah had fallen unusually quiet, his eyes still fixed on the receding tree line. When Lily turned to check on him, she was startled to find him smiling serenely, as if he understood something that his parents could not. "Bear friend," he said, patting the window glass gently. "Bear, say thank you." A chill ran down Lily's spine as she turned back to face the road ahead. How could her baby boy possibly know what the bear was thinking? And yet, after everything they had witnessed today, could she really dismiss the possibility that some sort of connection had formed between her son and the wild creature he had helped? As the car carried them away from Whispering Pines Forest, none of them noticed the sleek black SUV that pulled onto the road behind them, maintaining a discreet distance as it followed their retreat from the mountains. The drive back to their home in the suburbs of Oak Ridge took just over 3 hours, but to Lily it felt like days. Every mile that carried them away from the forest brought a strange mixture of relief and unease. Relief that they were escaping the immediate danger, but unease about what exactly they were leaving behind and what might be following them into their normal lives. Noah had fallen asleep about an hour into the journey, his small chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of childhood slumber. Occasionally, his lips would move as if he were speaking to someone in his dreams, and once he even giggled softly, his hand reaching out toward nothing. "He seems different," Lily whispered, turning in her seat to study her son's face. "Don't you think?" Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, dark circles forming under his eyes from the stress of the day. "He's just tired. We all are. This whole experience was traumatic. It's bound to affect him temporarily." But Lily wasn't convinced. There was something in Noah's expression, even in sleep, that hadn't been there before. A kind of awareness that seemed beyond his 14 months of life. She kept these thoughts to herself, however, knowing they would sound irrational, spoken aloud. "We need to report everything to the local authorities once we get home," Ethan said, changing the subject. "That second poacher. I think the bear might have killed him, Lily. We're witnesses to, I don't even know what to call it. A bear attack? Self-defense?" "Justice," Lily said quietly, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "It was justice. Those men tortured that poor animal and were planning to kill her and her cub for profit. They got what they deserved." Ethan looked at her, startled by the hardness in her tone. Lily had always been the gentler of the two of them, the one who insisted on catching spiders in cups to release them outside rather than killing them. But something had shifted in her today as well. "Still, we need to tell the police," he insisted, returning his eyes to the road. "That ranger already has one poacher in custody. They'll need to know about the second one." Lily nodded reluctantly. "But what exactly do we tell them? That our baby partially freed a captive bear, who then tracked us to our cabin to protect us from a poacher? They'll think we're insane." It was a valid concern. The events of the day defied rational explanation. Bears didn't seek out humans to protect them. They didn't wave goodbye. They didn't form bonds with toddlers who momentarily helped them. And yet, all of that seemed to have happened. As they approached the outskirts of Oak Ridge, Ethan made a decision. "We'll stick to the facts we can prove. We found a bear that had been tortured by poachers. A forest ranger arrived and arrested one of them. Later, the second poacher broke into our cabin and threatened us. During the confrontation, the bear appeared and attacked him. We fled for our safety. That's it. Nothing about Noah's connection to the bear, or the bear seeming to protect us specifically. Lily bit her lip but nodded in agreement. It was the only sensible approach, even if it felt like a betrayal of the truth. A truth that she herself was still struggling to comprehend. As they pulled into the driveway of their suburban home, a modest two-story with blue shutters and a well-maintained lawn, Ethan noticed a car parked across the street that he didn't recognize, a black SUV with tinted windows. His hands tightened on the steering wheel as a prickle of unease ran down his spine. "Lily," he said quietly, "when I get out, I want you to stay in the car with Noah. Lock the doors." "What's wrong?" she asked, instantly alert. "Probably nothing," he replied, trying to keep his voice casual. "Just being cautious after everything that's happened today." He stepped out of the car, stretching as if tired from the long drive while surreptitiously studying the SUV. The windows were too darkly tinted to see inside, but he could sense someone watching him. Taking what he hoped appeared to be a casual stance, he pulled out his phone and subtly angled it to capture the vehicle's license plate, then slipped it back into his pocket. As he moved to unload their luggage from the trunk, the SUV's door opened. Ethan tensed, ready to shout for Lily to drive away if necessary. But the figure that emerged wasn't the remaining poacher or some other threat. It was a woman in her 50s, dressed in a crisp gray pantsuit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Mr. Marshall," she called, approaching with measured steps. "Ethan Marshall?" Ethan closed the trunk, positioning himself between the approaching woman and the car where his family remained. "Who's asking?" The woman stopped a respectful distance away and reached into her jacket pocket. Ethan's muscles coiled with tension until she produced what appeared to be an official identification card. "Dr. Eleanor Hayes, Department of Wildlife Behavioral Studies," she said, holding up the ID for his inspection. "I'd like to speak with you about what happened at Whispering Pines today." Ethan frowned, suspicion replacing his initial fear. "How do you even know about that?" "We just left the mountains a few hours ago." Dr. Hayes' expression remained impassive. "News travels fast in my department, Mr. Marshall, especially when it involves unusual animal behavior. May we speak inside?" Ethan hesitated, still not fully convinced. "Let me see that ID again." When she handed it over, he examined it carefully. It appeared legitimate, with appropriate security features and holographic overlays. "Fine," he said finally, returning the ID. "But my family has been through enough today. This conversation will be brief." He signaled to Lily that it was safe to get out. She emerged cautiously with Noah, who had awakened during their exchange and was now peering curiously at the stranger from the safety of his mother's arms. As they approached, Dr. Hayes' professional demeanor faltered momentarily. Her eyes widened as she looked at Noah. A flash of something, recognition, excitement, crossing her face before her composed mask returned. "This must be the young man I've heard about," she said, her voice carrying a new note of interest. "The one who helped the bear." Noah, who had been relatively subdued since waking, suddenly perked up at the mention of the bear. "Bear friend," he said clearly, pointing back in the direction they had come from, toward the distant mountains. "Bear coming." A chill ran down Ethan's spine at his son's words. Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow but said nothing, instead gesturing toward the house. "Shall we?" Once inside, with Noah set up with some toys in the living room where they could keep an eye on him, the adults settled at the kitchen table. Dr. Hayes declined offers of refreshment, eager to get to the point of her visit. "I'm going to be direct, Mr. and Mrs. Marshall," she began, placing a sleek tablet on the table between them. "What you encountered today wasn't an ordinary bear." Ethan and Lily exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" Lily asked cautiously. Dr. Hayes tapped the tablet's screen, bringing up an image that made both marshals inhale sharply. It was a photo of the clearing where they had first encountered the bear, clearly taken from some distance with a telephoto lens. The image showed Noah standing before the massive bear, his tiny hand extended toward her taped muzzle. "How did you get this?" Ethan demanded, anger rising in his chest at the invasion of their privacy. "One of our research cameras," Dr. Hayes replied calmly. "We have dozens placed throughout Whispering Pines. We've been monitoring this particular bear for nearly 3 years now." She swiped to another image, this one showing the bear and her cub in a different part of the forest, without tape, taken what appeared to be months earlier based on the seasonal foliage. Her designation is WF-173, but the research team calls her Astra. She's approximately 7 years old and has displayed cognitive abilities far beyond what we typically observe in Ursus arctos, brown bears. Her problem-solving skills, memory, and social behaviors have been of particular interest to our department. "Why are you telling us this?" Lily asked, her protective instincts flaring. She glanced toward the living room where Noah was stacking blocks, seemingly oblivious to their conversation. Dr. Hayes's expression softened slightly. "Because what happened today between your son and Astra was extraordinary, even by her standards. Bears don't typically form immediate bonds with humans, especially not humans they perceive as potential threats to their cubs. Yet, she not only allowed your son to approach, but accepted his help." She swiped to another image, this one clearly from the camera of the forest ranger who had arrested the first poacher. It showed the aftermath of Noah's encounter with the tape partially removed from the bear's muzzle. "And then," Dr. Hayes continued, her voice taking on a note of scientific wonder, "she tracked you to your cabin and intervened when the second poacher threatened you. That level of apparent gratitude and protective behavior toward humans is unprecedented." Ethan leaned forward, his suspicion giving way to curiosity. "So you're saying this bear is special, more intelligent than others?" "We believe so, Doctor." Hayes nodded. "But there's more to it than that. We think there may be something special about your son as well." Lily stiffened. "What do you mean by that?" Dr. Hayes looked toward Noah thoughtfully. "Some humans possess a rare neurological pattern that seems to facilitate unusual connections with certain animals. We've documented cases across various cultures and geographical locations. People who demonstrate inexplicable bonds with wild creatures that would normally avoid or even attack humans. Are you suggesting my son has some kind of, psychic connection with animals?" Ethan asked incredulously. "Not psychic," Dr. Hayes corrected. "That implies something supernatural, which this isn't. It's a natural phenomenon, rare but documented. We call it interspecies neural resonance, INR for short. The human brain somehow emits frequencies or chemical signatures that certain animals recognize as non-threatening or even familiar." Lily shook her head, trying to process this information. "Even if that's true, how would you know Noah has this INR? You've just met him." A shadow passed over Dr. Hayes's face. "Because we've been monitoring him since he was born, Mrs. Marshall." The statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Ethan's hands curled into fists under the table. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Dr. Hayes maintained her professional calm. "Your son's birth was flagged in our system because of certain genetic markers present in both your family lines. The Marshall and Chen families both have historical instances of Indian rupee manifestation. Lily gasped. Chen was her maiden name. How could you possibly know my family history? This is insane. Our department's research goes back generations, Mrs. Marshall, Dr. Hayes replied. Your maternal great-grandmother was documented communicating with wolves in rural China in the 1920s. Mr. Marshall's paternal grandfather worked with elephants in India with unusual success in the 1940s. These weren't coincidences. Ethan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I think you need to leave. Now, whatever research you're doing, we didn't consent to being part of it. Dr. Hayes remained seated, her expression unchanging. I understand your reaction, Mr. Marshall, but please consider the situation carefully. What happened today with Astra the bear was just the beginning. Your son's abilities will likely grow stronger as he develops. Without proper guidance, these connections could become dangerous. For him and for the animals. Dangerous how? Lily asked, despite herself. INR isn't a one-way street, Dr. Hayes explained. The neural resonance creates a bond that affects both parties. In children as young as Noah, the ability is still developing, still malleable. But as he grows, the connections he forms could intensify. Animals might seek him out, might become dependent on him emotionally, and he, in turn, might find himself experiencing their emotions, their instincts. Ethan scoffed. This sounds like science fiction. I assure you it's very real, Dr. Hayes replied. She reached into her briefcase and produced a manila folder, which she placed on the table. These are case studies of other children with INR. Read them and then decide if you still want me to leave. Before either Marshall could respond, a sound from outside caught their attention. A car door slamming, followed by footsteps on the front walk. Ethan moved to the window and peered out through the blinds. A police cruiser was parked in their driveway, and a uniformed officer was approaching their front door. Were you followed? Dr. Hayes asked, suddenly alert. No, Ethan replied, confused. At least, I don't think so. We called the sheriff's department from the road to report what happened at the cabin. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime at odds with the tension that had filled the room. Ethan went to answer it, leaving Lily and Dr. Hayes at the kitchen table in an uncomfortable silence. At the door stood a young officer, probably in his late 20s, with a serious expression that seemed too mature for his boyish face. Mr. Marshall, I'm Officer Daniels with the Oak Ridge PD. We received a report about an incident at Whispering Pines Forest involving you and your family. Yes, Ethan confirmed, stepping aside to let the officer enter. We called it in a couple of hours ago. Officer Daniels stepped inside, removing his hat respectfully. His eyes swept the entryway and living room with professional assessment before settling on Noah, who was still playing with his blocks, seemingly oblivious to the adult conversations happening around him. Is that your son, sir? The officer asked, his voice taking on an odd note that immediately set off warning bells in Ethan's mind. Yes, that's Noah, he replied cautiously. Is there a problem? The officer's hand moved to rest on his holstered weapon, not drawing it, but clearly making its presence known. I need all adults in this household to sit down in the living room, please. Keep your hands visible. Ethan frowned. Officer, what's going on? We're the victims here. We were threatened by a poacher who broke into our cabin. Sir, please comply, Officer Daniels insisted, his voice hardening. Mrs. Marshall, Dr. Hayes, yes, I can see you in the kitchen. Please join us in the living room. Lily gathered Noah into her arms and moved to sit on the couch, her face pale with renewed fear. Dr. Hayes joined them, her expression calculating as she studied the officer. "You know my name," she observed. "Yet, I don't believe we've met." Officer Daniels ignored her comment. "I'm here regarding the death of Harold Mercer, whose body was found at your rental cabin approximately 3 hours ago. According to the forest ranger on scene, you and your family fled the area immediately after Mr. Mercer was attacked by a bear, an attack that witnesses suggest may have been provoked." "Provoked?" Ethan repeated incredulously. "That man broke into our cabin with a knife. He threatened our family." "That's not how his associate describes the events," Officer Daniels countered. "Harlan Kane claims that your family has some kind of control over the bear that killed his partner, that you used the animal as a weapon against them." Lily let out a strangled laugh. "That's absurd. We were hiding in the bathroom when the bear attacked him. How could we possibly control a wild animal?" The officer's eyes drifted to Noah, who had stopped playing with his blocks and was now watching the conversation with unusual intensity for a child his age. "According to Mr. Kane, it has something to do with your son." A heavy silence fell over the room. Dr. Hayes was the first to break it. "Officer Daniels," she said calmly, "I don't believe you're actually with the Oak Ridge Police Department." The young man's eyes snapped to her face. "Excuse me?" Dr. Hayes pointed to his badge. "The Oak Ridge PD switched to a new badge design 3 months ago. Yours is the old style. Additionally, you arrived in a cruiser without calling for backup, despite responding to what you claim is a homicide investigation. Standard protocol would require at least 2 officers." Officer Daniels' expression hardened, his hand tightening on his weapon. "Ma'am, I'd advise you to remain silent." "Who are you, really?" Ethan demanded, moving protectively closer to Lily and Noah. "Who sent you?" For a moment it seemed the man might draw his weapon. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. "Clever," he said, addressing Dr. Hayes. "But it changes nothing. We know about the boy now. We know what he can do." "We?" Lily echoed, clutching Noah tighter. "There are people who would pay handsomely for a child with your son's talents," the fake officer said. "People who understand the true value of controlling animals rather than just studying them." He cast a dismissive glance at Dr. Hayes. "The Department of Wildlife Behavioral Studies isn't the only organization interested in interspecies neural resonance." Dr. Hayes stood slowly, her posture rigid with anger. "Biosynapse," she said, the name clearly carrying significant meaning to her. "You're with Grayson, aren't you?" The man neither confirmed nor denied her accusation, but his smile widened slightly. "Dr. Hayes, always a step behind. You had years to study these subjects, and what have you accomplished? Reports, papers, observations? We're interested in applications." "Applications?" Ethan repeated, a sick feeling growing in his stomach. "What exactly would you use a toddler for?" "Your son has a gift, Mr. Marshall," the man said, his tone almost reasonable. "A gift that could revolutionize everything from military operations to pest control, from wildlife management to entertainment. Imagine armies of animals that respond to human commands. Imagine dangerous predators neutralized without bullets or traps. Imagine being able to clear vermin from an entire city with a single thought." "He's a baby, not a weapon," Lily hissed, tears of anger forming in her eyes. "For now," the man agreed, "but with proper training." Noah, who had been watching the exchange with unusual focus, suddenly spoke up. "Bad man," he said clearly, pointing at the fake officer. "Bad man hurt bears." The man's attention shifted fully to Noah, a look of fascination crossing his face. "Extraordinary," he murmured. The neural resonance must have created some kind of psychic imprint from the bear's memories. He can access its experiences. Dr. Hayes took a step forward. "You need to leave. Now, the real police have already been contacted." The false officer laughed. "By whom?" "You've been in this room the entire time." "Not by me," Dr. Hayes replied calmly. "By my team. The same team that's been monitoring this house since we arrived. The same team that's currently surrounding this property." As if on cue, the sound of vehicles pulling up outside filled the room, followed by doors slamming and footsteps on the gravel driveway. The man moved to the window and peered out, his composed facade cracking slightly as he saw the array of official-looking SUVs now blocking both ends of the street. "This isn't over," he said, turning back to face them. "Biosynapse doesn't give up easily on acquisitions of this value. Your acquisition is a human child," Dr. Hayes said coldly. "And if Grayson thinks I'll let him experiment on another one, he's severely underestimating my resolve." The front door burst open, and 3 men in tactical gear entered, weapons raised. They wore uniforms similar to SWAT, but with patches that read DWBS Enforcement Division, a branch of Dr. Hayes' department that Ethan hadn't known existed until this moment. "On the ground," the lead agent shouted at the fake officer. "Hands where we can see them." For a tense moment it seemed the man might resist. His hand hovered near his weapon, his eyes calculating. Then, with a fluid motion that spoke of professional training, he raised his hands in surrender and slowly knelt on the floor. As the agent secured him, Dr. Hayes turned to the marshals, her professional facade finally cracking to reveal genuine concern. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I should have approached you differently. But now you understand why we've been monitoring Noah. It wasn't just scientific curiosity, it was protection." Ethan, his arm wrapped protectively around Lily and Noah, shook his head in disbelief. "This is insane. Yesterday we were a normal family. Today we're being told our son has some rare ability that makes him a target for, what? Corporate kidnappers? Secret research programs?" "I know it's overwhelming," Dr. Hayes acknowledged. "But you're not alone in this. There are other families like yours, other children with abilities similar to Noah's. We help them learn to manage these connections safely, to develop them in positive ways." "And what about the bear?" Lily asked suddenly. "Astra. Is she safe?" Dr. Hayes' expression softened. "For now, her unusual bond with Noah has been documented, but Biosynapse doesn't have access to our research locations. However, given what's happened today, we'll need to relocate her deeper into the protected zones of the forest." Noah, who had been listening with that same uncanny focus, suddenly squirmed in his mother's arms. "Bear sad," he said, his lower lip trembling. "Bear looking." The adults fell silent, staring at the toddler whose simple words carried such disturbing implications. Was he somehow sensing the bear's emotions, even from this distance? Was she, impossibly, searching for him? Outside, the sky had begun to darken with the approach of evening, and with it came the first drops of rain, pattering against the windows like gentle fingertips seeking entry. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, a sound not unlike the warning growl of a mother bear protecting what was hers.